Is it a mistake or the wrong decision to start Drake Maye at this time?
Yeah, it is a mistake, I think. And I look at it from this standpoint of what changed between the loss to Miami on Sunday and when they made this decision and it got announced, at least through the media, through Schefter and Rappaport on Tuesday. What changed? They had no practices, so it's not like something you saw in practice. So in other words, if he's good enough to start this week, then because he's your best option, it gives you the best chance to win. Then how is he not the best option, best chance to win 2 days earlier against Miami? And that's where this sort of all falls apart logically. They're deviating from their plan. That's obvious. I know Gerard didn't want to admit that when he was asked. I think it was Phil Perry who asked him whether they had to expedite the plan. But it's pretty clear that they are deviating from the plan for May and expediting the plan to start him. And I also look at it, here's a phrase I know you use sometimes, Felger, hold your water. For me, hold your water one more week. Start him against Jacksonville, the worst pass defense in the NFL, a team that's shambolic overall and poorly coached, a team that's 1-4. It's over in London, so you're not dealing with the expectations of the home crowd, which are going to be sky high, but you're also not dealing with the hostile road crowd. That's sort of like in restaurant terms, like a soft opening in terms of starting for Drake Maye. This is very challenging because you're facing an excellent defense that's third in the league in pass defense, that's eighth in sacks, that gets after the quarterback, that just made Josh Allen, one of the few true franchise quarterbacks in the league, look horrific. He was 9 of 30. And then you have the immediate juxtaposition comparison of C.J. Stroud and the guy you just drafted. Because everybody's going to want your guy to be C.J. Stroud and change the face of the organization immediately, which is what Stroud did. So I can't think of a worse spot to drop Maye into than this one on Sunday.
Chris, isn't it possible that they are starting him this week precisely because they look at Jacksonville and say that's a winnable game, and they don't want him to make his debut in that game because now you're introducing other variables that wouldn't otherwise exist? In other words, let him get his feet wet at home where you would prefer to start a rookie quarterback, no matter the opponent. And then that way, by the time we get to Jacksonville in the next 5 or 6 weeks in the schedule, we can actually win these games against some of these bad teams.
Well, then you should have started him against Miami. I mean, that's pretty much the most winnable game you had. They have a backup quarterback in there. The game was at home, only like 2 days, or if Mayo talked to these guys on Monday night, so like a day transpired from that game. So again, if you want to say that, that's fine. If you believe all that, then you should have believed all that. If all that is true, if everything they're saying about Maye, the best option, he won it, he's our best quarterback, he's been trending. If all that stuff was true, then you should have started him against Miami to answer your question, Mazz. That would have been better than Houston, and then he would have had 2 games under his belt going into Jacksonville. And he also would have a game under his belt going into Houston, which would have helped him for Sunday. So it just can't, what they're saying just doesn't add up.
Are you implying there might have been some outside influence or something happened on Monday that precipitated this decision then?
I think what happened was on Sunday they lost. It's a 4-game losing streak. And I think that they hit the panic button a little bit. Seeing the season slip away, dealing with the heat. I think they were feeling the heat down there of a 4-game losing streak and the offense not performing well at all, being the worst passing offense in the league. And I think everybody was feeling the heat for their part in it, all the way up to ownership. Ownership, Elliott Wolf gets more heat when they lose because people start looking at the roster and what they don't have. Gerard gets more heat when they lose, particularly when you have a situation like Sunday where every little thing matters and the penalties are piling up and there's some questionable clock management. He gets more heat. Alex Van Pelt gets more heat. So everybody gets more heat. So how do you take the heat off you? Well, you go to the human vessel of hope, Drake Maye, and it's a reset for the entire season. It's like putting, when Jim and I used to play, video games, it's like hitting the reset button on the video. You don't like the way the game's going? We'll just hit the reset button. And that's basically what they've done on the entire season. This is like week 1 of the Patriots season for all these guys all over again.
And Chris, I'm with you on this, but that's them being a laughingstock on the field, but off the field too. You had the Jabril Pepper situation. Do you think that influenced this too?
I don't. I honestly don't think that influenced it. If anything, you're looking at that. I mean, you can make a case if you're a conspiracy theorist that changes the narrative, changes the discussion. So I see where you're coming from, but I don't think that's the case. And here's one thing I will give Gerard Mayo credit for. while they have had this organizational plan all along, whatever it is, they've never fully divulged it to us, and that's understandable. I do think he's been ahead of the curve and ahead of the plan and pushing it the whole time. So I will say that. I think and ultimately I feel like he got his way here in going to Drake Maye, but I think he was the one all along that wanted to speed this up. And I feel that way because of the way he just crowbarred Maye's NFL debut into that Jets game. That was a tell. That was a tell when they crowbarred Maye into the end of that game that he wanted to move things up and do it sooner rather than later. But I'm with Orlovsky. And again, I just go back to sort of hold your water, wait one more week. And just the week before, right, Gerard Mayo was telling us, he was sort of talking about, well, we expected to take our lumps this year. And I like the progress we're making, even though it might not be reflected in the record. So just the week before, that's what the message was. Like, hey, we're making progress, even if it's not reflected in the record, and we expected to take our lumps. So if that's the case, shouldn't you take your lumps for one more week if ultimately it benefits the future of the franchise instead of, panicking a little bit and throwing this kid in there against the Houston Texans, a legitimate Super Bowl contender? By the way, who happen to have the number 1 rated passing offense in the NFL, while you have number 32.
Were you just going to say something, Miss?
No.
I thought I saw you open your mouth and get ready to say something, so I'm just making sure. Chris, how do you think it's going to look? How are they going to play? How are they going to use him?
That's a great question. I hope it's closer to what they did in the preseason. After he made his preseason debut, it's closer to what they did maybe against, Washington, where you're out there and you are in a situation where you're running some concepts and doing some things that he's really comfortable in, that he's capable of doing and familiar with, and that you're maybe not as stringently sticking to the Alex Van Pelt West Coast style of offense that they did under Brissett. So what I'm talking about is, I want to see some zone read. I would like to see some RPOs. I would like to see them get him on the move a little bit and cut down the field and give him some half-field reads. And if he doesn't feel comfortable with the half-field read because he's already outside the pocket, he can tuck it and run it, which is not great for the long term, but it's in the short term, it allows him to survive and feel good about himself. So I do hope that they use some concepts from college that maybe you wouldn't run with Brissett, that he can be comfortable with, and they don't just try and stick him in this offense completely and say, run this offense. Although I will say, one of the reasons they went with Alex Van Pelt, and one of the things that was advertised was this was supposed to be a quarterback-friendly offense.
So that was the next question. Is Van Pelt the guy to be ushering them through this?
No, I don't think so. I just don't. And that's, look, I think that Alex Van Pelt did some excellent work last year in Cleveland with some veteran quarterbacks and a strong offensive line and Nick Chubb and a strong running game most of the year. I think Van Pelt is in some ways like some of these young quarterbacks. If you give him the right elements and the right components, he can do a good job. I thought Orlovsky was interesting there and reminding us, too, about the play calling, because that was one of the things. This is a guy, although he had been an experienced offensive coach and offensive coordinator, he's not an experienced play caller. And I think that's shown up at times this year. And that's one of the reasons I would say he's not the guy. But you're looking at offensively. The Patriots are 31st in the league in total offense. That's not all Alex Van Pelt. He doesn't have a lot to work with. But again, two things can be true. He doesn't have a lot to work with, but it should be better than this. And oh, by the way, the only offense that's worse than the Patriots statistically in the NFL is the one he just left, the system he came from in Cleveland. And that goes back to something you and I have talked about, Felge, in terms of nobody around the league was clamoring to emulate or imitate the Cleveland Browns offense, except for the Patriots, apparently.
It was just such an obviously uninspired choice from day one. And anyone who got behind it was just doing it because they wanted it to work, because they want the team to be successful. So I'm not calling you a bad person, but in your heart, in your head, you knew it. You know it now. Alex Van Pelt's not the guy. You just wanted it to be so, but not because you knew it was so or thought it was so. It was only a hope. Or you're just defending the team for whatever reason. But it's not the guy. You're smirking, Mazz.
No, I'm smirking because I thought that that answer by Gasper was downright Neely-esque. It was really, again, is Alex Van Pelt the right man to lead Drake Maye through this? No.
That's a direct answer. More
attaboy, Chris.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Patriots analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.